Okay, I've done a lot of research on universal basic income, and I was conveniently doing this research. I was in Poli Sci 103, which is global political issues. So first poli sci class that you take, it's basically like 101. And I was conveniently had a poli sci project, final project that gave me like room to do anything, and it was conveniently in the time that universal basic income was talked a lot on YouTube, and so I want to talk a little bit about what people have said about universal basic income, and there was also one of the 10 chapters, the 10 main chapters of political science, is economic integration. So this is the eventual economic integration of universal basic income. One of the other chapters was like foreign aid. The other chapters was like international collaboration or cooperation or something like that. And all those tie into basically economic integration and its benefits. So the idea of universal basic income is where every American over 18 years old would receive a monthly earning to spend it as they see fit. And it's been in discussion since the 1960s. Milton Friedman in the 60s, an American economist, 1976 Nobel Prize recipient, described the purpose of universal basic income as a proposal to help poor people by giving them money, which is what they need. And rather than having the money, rather than having the people come before a government official to be told where to spend their handout while being spied on with risks of punishment to make sure they're not abusing the system, um, universal basic income would be lenient and they'd be able to spend it however they see fit. Other known people who have supported the idea is Bill Gates, Mark Zuckerberg, um, Richard Nixon, and Martin Luther King. Richard Nixon, even despite its long time discussion in communist and Marxist literature, universal basic income. And according to according to the Atlantic. And today, Andrew Yang, an American entrepreneur, politician, philanthropist, and founder of Venture for America, is one of the top Democratic presidential candidates who's going to be running in 2020. And he has a plan to implement universal basic income in the United States by taxing all the tech companies. I'm going to go through a bunch of options, like we have the crypto tax option if implemented by the UN that would bank us a lot of money. There's a stock tax option, and there's the 1% of every country's budget option, and then there's this tech option. I thought at one point that the tech company tax wouldn't be fair because it's not directed at all companies, but it's directed at the tech companies, and they're all getting off on us. So we need to uh, and it's at every if it's at every tech company, it'll be fair, and maybe cap it or something so it's not unfair to a handful of companies. Maybe cap it at a certain amount. Um, but getting all this money in the hands of the people, and we've been using Finland, which has had success in universal basic income, as evidence to prove that this is something that could work. Some people that have said it might not work uh, due to the fact they avoid it because it's over ambitious is Joe Rogan, an American comedian, podcast host, UFC commentator, and businessman, who said in one of his podcasts that the idea of getting these people, unemployed people on welfare or food stamps, to pick themselves up by their bootstraps is just crazy. When he was discussing the universal basic income, uh, which the purpose of universal basic income, which is to get people to get more motivated to get a high paying job, as they think that, as Rogan and most of his guests think that the state, if the state covered someone's cost of living, it'd cause them to become demotivated to go to school or work because they would not have to. One of his guests, Ben Shapiro, an American lawyer, conservative commentator, writer, columnist, and fellow podcaster, added that recipients of universal basic income would be more likely to spend the money elsewhere where they're not supposed to and find themselves back in the same hole every month. Another one of Rogan's guests, Tim Pool, an independent American journalist, he's one of the guys who called out PayPal. said that you could find him in the skate park when universal basic income is implemented. And this is something that would be prevalent among Americans. So all these people agreed that people would lose the need to even have a job and therefore lose purpose. But trials of universal basic income in Finland have showed quite the opposite. In a CNBC international segment, is universal basic income working? We went to Finland to find out. Unemployed people in Finland who were chosen to participate in the universal basic income trial in Finland were actually appreciative of the assistance that they were given, which gave them assurance that they would be well off without having to worry about uncalculated or unexpected expenses. Um, uh, Also, people usually put off certain errands like fixing their car, getting a new laptop. That's what I do. Uh, and because they do not yet have the funds to take care of it. So, usually, the next thing on people's priority lists include ambitious tax, but after new laptop or fixing their car is include ambitious tax like tasks like going to school or starting a business. Or going to a vocational school or something. And that's usually next on people's list, which is exactly what the money was spent on in Finland, according to the Kyrgyzstan video on YouTube. Kyrgyzstan is one of the very popular channels that elaborates on many political topics in detail on YouTube. This topic's been more popular in political discussion because our unemployment situation invokes not only a setting involving specific rules and guidelines when the setting should be understanding and lenient towards the individual, but it also uh, has standards that threaten livelihood if they're not met, which is not the way to deal with someone in dire need of assistance. Even though Donald Trump, 45th President of the United States and businessman, spoke of our recent accomplishments in terms of unemployment in the 2019 State of the Union, and he included the fact that 5 million people have been lifted off food stamps since last year. Our unemployment is at its lowest rate in a half century, as we currently have 157 million workers in America. Minority and disability related unemployment rates are at all-time lows. The unemployment situation is still not fully solved, as many people are still going to homeless shelters in need of assistance. The reason this topic's been prevalent in 2019 is because it deals with so much money. In a world where we do not yet have free medical insurance, free education, free housing, there are still so many things which are on our priority list to meet our mandatory needs that are not taken care of in politics. There's been suggestions to implement a tax against wealthiest 1% of people, tax against, which I'm not a fan of due to the fact that it's unfair, a tax against stock earnings on Wall Street, which I'm a fan of as long as it's fair, and even doubling the shipping tax for companies shipping goods, which I'm not a fan of. These solutions would only produce a few $100 billion, so the fact that the tech company tax could bag $2 trillion a year, that's $12,000 a year or $1,000 a month for every American over 18 years old, means that the way of obtaining more money to do more things as a nation could get us an extra $2 trillion per year to work with. So $2 trillion is a lot of money. If we did implement a tax against tech companies, there'd be a global topic for our own citizens. There'd be a global topic of discussion regarding the fact that one of the world powers, especially in technology, is keeping all the money to themselves and their own people, which is why this order should be an act of the United Nations. That's a tech tax I'm talking about, rather than the United States. Unless we could eventually use this money for purposes of foreign aid and economic integration with developing countries, unless we could eventually use this money for purpose of foreign aid and economic integration with developing countries. Additionally, we would have a problem taking universal basic income away from our citizens once it's already implemented, which is why I think we need to do half it first. Because like in 2 years or 4 years or something, if you want to take some of that 2 trillion and use it for economic integration to help developing countries or something, which should be higher on our priority list, or do some mega projects or something, then it's going to be harder to take everyone's allowance away from them after it's already given to them. So I think we need to start with 500 a month or something, and take the other half so you can has 1 trillions to do mega projects, and which is and 500 isn't enough for rent, but it's going to be like the Obamacare situation rather than the free medical care for all at first. It's going to make things more affordable, and it's not going to cover your food and it's not going to cover your rent, but it's going to make it much more affordable. And if you already have food and rent covered, maybe you can fix your laptop or fix your car, or yeah, get a new laptop, fix your car, or take like a vocational certificate or something and get a good job. And the extra $1 trillion of necessities for our country that we've not been able to handle in recent years because our budget was not big enough. Another person, Barack Obama, American attorney, politician, 44, president of the United States, clarifies the importance of universal basic income by being funded by technology when he says, the biggest challenge for workers in countries like mine today is technology, as we need to consider more fundamental reimagining for our social and political arrangements. Because artificial intelligence is here and it's accelerating, and you're going to have driverless cars, you're going to have more and more automated services. This is important because it points out how technology is increasing exponentially and clarifies that this is why we must benefit off it rather than simply being challenged by it in our day-to-day lives. And I mean challenged. These guys are getting off on us. I think someone's hacking the shit out of me. We got, I don't know if it's someone with a security clearance or who it is, but that I shouldn't be gotten off on like that. Another expert, another Nobel Prize winning economist, Paul Krugman, in a 2019 interview, he said he gave some recommendations on where we could spend this extra $1 trillion if we did get better places to spend the money, basically. And he said that we could finish the Affordable Care Act that Obamacare began, and make free Medicare for all, as well as aiding families and make sure we have adequate child care. And he also says that he's somewhat opposed to universal basic income being implemented in the next few years because we are still far from the age of automation where robots are taking over all our jobs. He also said that unions would want a lot of money and become more hostile when they aren't accommodated by our political choices in a time of recession. So we're going to have issues with labor unions when we spend the money elsewhere, and the better ideas to spend the money is to finish what Obamacare began. And even though we're in a technological recession, technology is increasing more exponentially than any other field. Even though we're in a technological recession, technology is increasing more exponentially than any other field. In fact, according to Jordan Peterson, renowned Canadian clinical psychologist and author, computer power is doubling every 18 months. So if a tech tax is implemented in the next few years, we can get a lot of national projects completed until we are overwhelmed by our technological evolutions and can begin aiding other countries, which should be higher on our priority list once we have all our problems solved. We also need free education. Bernie Sanders, American politician, served junior Senate in the state of Vermont since 2007, after being a member of the House of Representatives since 1991, has been highly involved in political debates and discussions since the early 1980s when he was mayor of Burlington in Vermont, has proposed the Wall Street tax to cover free education. In reality, if this Wall Street tax were implemented, it would be better spent elsewhere, as we can just make in my opinion, if this Wall Street tax were implemented, it'd be better spent elsewhere rather than free education. As in my opinion, we can just make an announcement to all the universities to save all their undergraduate online courses in 2020, so when all their textbooks and curriculums are updated in 2025, when 2025 comes around, we could make those 2020 courses with their programs, curriculums, syllabi, quizzes, and prompts available to the public in 2025, not affecting the college and loan systems that we currently have, not affecting college sports, while obtaining degrees would still require payment to university. It's just a study website. I want to call it Whiteboard. That'd be convenient, and this would leave all the components to of our college and universities unaffected while making all the knowledge available to the public, increasing convenience, potential, productivity, and evolutionary pace. Medical insurance per month isn't even close to $500. and we could focus the assistance on families who are not already covered by another health insurance, meaning we could focus the assistance on families who are not already covered by another health insurance. So it could be selective. If you have health insurance through your job, if you're military, or if you have your own health insurance, then we can only spend a certain amount on free medical insurance for somebody. And we give the first 50%, uh, split the tech tax 50-50, give 50% to our citizens for economic assistance, and we still have 50% to work with. We could split that into 5 groups of 10 or something to accomplish some projects that are higher on priority list. And I went in on this a little bit in my 2019 address, and we could finish Obamacare's purpose of getting free health care and free health insurance. With the first 10%, we could focus on things such as gigafactories, improving renewable energy, and manufacturing at the same time. And we could also do infrastructure like tunnels, megastructures, housing, agriculture mega projects, and I listed some other things at the end of my 2019 address, and even adding more branches to the military, um, like even police, fire rescue, medical, and construction, teachers, getting all those as part of the military, so they could get free houses or something if we do infrastructure structure at the same time or something, and making sure they have free housing, vacations, educational benefits like our armed forces already do with the final 10%. Um, then after a few years of accomplishing more than what we would have thought of with that we would have accomplished 10 years ago, uh, we could focus on international cooperation. Elon Musk, successful South African technology entrepreneur, investor, and engineer, uh, said that universal basic income is going to be necessary before confirming to his interviewer that unemployed people will be paid across the globe. So the emphasis on the word globe in this particular interview addresses the concept that once universal basic income is established within America itself, we will need to incorporate it globally. And I went through this, most of my 2019 address regarded this, probably like the middle 30 minutes of it. Was talking about a forum and how it should be run by the UN, and it would show like priorities of main priority list, and it would have maps of every priority one by one down to like the county, and then it could then we could decide, we could make effective conclusions and stuff, and it would basically uh, we'd focus on foreign aid as a world power. That's the purpose of the UN anyway, and with abundance of resources while other countries are lagging decades behind. And the only way to do this, incorporating our system globally, is through international communication, most likely through the UN. It says nearly every country on the globe is one of its members. Furthermore, in that interview, it was elaborated that these are things that I think would happen. These are things I think will happen. And the statement provides hope as someone who's the founder or co-founder of such companies such as SpaceX, Tesla, Neuralink, PayPal, as well as being involved in multiple other major companies, has high hopes for all 7 billion people around the globe to be given universal basic income. And that's been said, and these people will be more well off, having all their necessities met, or at least made things more affordable, and maybe even provide them with financial assistance to start a company and end up gathering even more money. And and this would cause a positive domino effect and make money more prevalent in developing countries. Um, Leaving room for more possibilities of buying and selling resources, which in turn would increase international trade. And there's a lot more benefits of economic integration, international trade, that I go over in my other video. Um, we must not be too afraid of giving developing countries our money if other world powers or countries of continents that are well off, like Europe, are on board with sacrificing the same portion of their tech companies to lend a hand to the people of developing countries, which could result in a domino effect of positive results, as people in developing countries could eventually afford a computer and a business so they can contribute to their own country's progress, resulting in less need of foreign aid and the addition of new minds to contribute to prevalent topics of political discussions as their basic needs become met. Because that's probably what they're focusing on currently. The eventual economic integration of universal basic income for purposes of foreign aid would give more developed countries more resources, which in turn would cause a domino effect of positive results, including reducing hunger, terrorism, necessity for military assistance, while maintaining a proper peacekeeping front between countries. The promotion of developed countries' economy, education, and food assistance could also promote democracy, inclusion, and civil society. Promotion of developing countries' economy, education, and food assistance could promote their democracy, inclusion, and civil society, and could cause positive results that we could not have even thought of by satisfying the mandatory needs of everyone on Earth, allowing everyone to focus on other things in relief that there isn't anybody on Earth in dire need of assistance. This could expand markets, improve sanitation, increase peaceful transitions, make governments more efficient spenders, and increase privatization, liberalization, investment, and trade. Most important things that it could reduce are poverty, infant mortality, resource insecurity, violent conflict, dissent, repression, and exploitative, corruptive, and illegal tactics, job loss, stagnating wages, and economic decline. Universal basic income could also eventually reduce the need for international loans, as there won't be any countries held back by a developed ally in a lagging behind in a particular alliance or trading bloc. And even though there will be a time where the richest countries will be sacrificing their own profit for developing countries, this trend would decrease exponentially as every country obtains a system of maintaining all of their necessary resources as they are able to move down on their priority lists as all of their basic needs become met. So yeah, that's the basically how options of how we could do the economic integration of universal basic income to get all the developing countries farther down their priority lists, and that's also all the things that all the positive things that it would cause if we do end up doing that. But I don't think we should give every American $12,000 a year, because we're going to have to take it away from them eventually, because we need to do some foreign aid.